Hi, my name is Hugh McKenna from Asgard Athletics. Today we're going to be going over 3 different corrective exercises to help you with your Brazilian Jiu Jitsu game. Even if you don't do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, these are great corrective exercises, especially if you're sitting around all day. For all you Jiu Jitsu practitioners out there, I'm sure you've seen your coach and the older guys in Jiu Jitsu, and they all walk around like they've been riding on a horse for the last 24 hours like this, and they're waddling around, and their hips are all dysfunctional. So the majority of these exercises are going to be concentrated to the hips. The first one that we're going to do, all you need is a band and a seat. So you're going to sit down, you're going to put it over your shoulder, you're going to bring it behind your back like it's a seat belt, but in the back. So like across your body, but behind you. And you're going to pull the tension out, and you're going to hook it to your opposite foot. So if it's on my left shoulder, it's going to go to my right foot. I hook it over the center of my foot. I don't want it on the top because otherwise the band is going to snap me in the face. I don't want it too close to the bottom because for you gentlemen, that's not going to feel very good. So you're going to be here. Make sure that you put the band outside of your leg and underneath your arm, not over your neck. Your hips, your knees are going to be hip width apart. You're going to suck your belly button in a little bit just to get that intra-abdominal pressure. You're going to anterior tilt your hips, so your tailbone is rolling backwards as the front of your hips are rolling forwards. You're going to keep your knees in line. You're going to push into the floor a little bit and curl back with this leg. You're going to bring your knees to an even height. Now the band wants to pull your leg out and turn your leg out at the same time. You got to fight both those actions. So you're going to turn your leg in and bring it towards the center line at the same time. You're going to extend your leg but not lock your leg out. You want like a little soft bend in your knee, but you don't want it totally bent either, so just soft bend. So once your legs are in position here, you're going to sit up nice and tall, breathe your chest nice and big in a balloon, like all 360 degrees of air coming in, not just like breathing into like these front ribs here. Then you're going to lean forward from your hips, not from your chest. You don't want to crush down here. You want to lean forward like you're falling over. Okay, and as you do that, anterior tilt your hips a little bit. Make sure that you're fighting the band's pull and internally rotating and bringing your leg towards the center line. Then once you lean forward as far as you can, you're going to rotate like you're a sprinter, like this. And you're just going to hold it there for like 20, 30 seconds. And as you breathe into your rib cage and try and expand it in 360 degrees. Try and breathe your spine nice and long and breathe through your nose. So you're going to be here, lean forward, slight sucking on the belly, turning the leg in, bring it towards the center line, and you're just going to hold right here, making sure that you're not crushing down here, that you're a nice broad chest. And give yourself some breaths. And you might find that your leg spazzes out like mine a little bit if you're a little dysfunctional. That's okay, it's normal. Make sure that you're not leaning into this side and that you're not leaning too far to this side, that you're pretty centered as you lean forward and you rotate just the thoracic and hold. And then you relax. I like to do it 3 times on each side. I like to leave the band on one side and do it 3 times in a row, just so I don't have to be tediously changing the band to each side every time. One of the many reasons why that's a good corrective exercise for Jiu-Jitsu is that you're constantly like opening your legs and externally rotating your leg, like for triangles and like just re-guarding, keeping your elbows to your knees on the ground. And a lot of the times you overly externally rotate your legs and then you start getting shortened glutes, and then that shortened glute leads to tight IT bands and inactive inner thigh muscles. So this is turning on this musculature in here, allowing this fascia to get retensioned, and so it's not overly tight anymore. And for a lot of you with like IT band syndrome or lower back pain, this might help you a lot. The second corrective exercise that we're going to do is to retension your hip flexors a little bit. A lot of jiu-jitsu practitioners play a lot of guard, so you're doing like a lot of hip flexion and keeping these really short and tight throughout the majority of your matches and your day. For those of you who sit at a desk all day long, you're constantly in a shortened position, these hip flexors, and then your body gets a little tight fascia there. So this next corrective exercise is going to be to get a little bit of like hip extension rather than hip flexion and loosen up the gunked up tissue in here, while simultaneously trying to activate the tissue that gives you hip extension. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a dumbbell, you're going to get into a half kneeling position here. I like to keep my toes curled on the bottom. You can have your laces flat, it's up to you. You're gonna grab the dumbbell by the ends of it like this, and you're gonna put it in this pocket. Make sure that your knees are right in line with your hips, that you're pushing into the ground and curling back a little bit with this foot. You're gonna hinge your hips backwards, so you're gonna come into hip flexion as you put this in the pocket of the leg that's down, the knees down on the floor. So you're gonna hip hinge right here. Then you're gonna start swinging your thoracic up to the other side and bringing this up to the shoulder like this. As you do that, you're gonna come from this slight little hip flexion to hip extension by activating the glute and driving the hip forward, okay? You don't wanna drive the hips so far forward that you're bending your rib cage behind your hips here. You wanna keep your rib cage in front of your hips just very slightly as you move forward in space here and go into hip extension. So you're here, slight hip hinge, start swinging the the dumbbell first, squeeze the glute, and then pause here for 2 seconds and then come back down. Pause here, come back down. Pause here, come back down. Squeeze the glute to come up, so hip hinge, glute squeezes to come up, drive into hip extension, bring this over the shoulder, and then come back down. I like to do this like 10 or 15 times each side, and for 3 sets. The third exercise, I'm sure you've seen, aside from walking with their feet out, a lot of the jiu-jitsu guys have this like super flat lower back and their butt is tilted underneath like this. So they posterior tilt their pelvis too much. And then they get this like really flat lower back and have these legs wide and they're walking around like this, okay? In order to prevent that, we wanna learn how to anterior tilt our hips and make sure that our tissue on this back chain is long enough to allow us to anterior tilt our pelvis. A lot of the times the tissue, especially like right under here, gets really gunked up, and when you go to anterior tilt, you just can't do it. Okay, so you're gonna grab 2 dumbbells. You're gonna be here. I'm gonna turn to the side so you can see a little better what's happening. You're gonna line your feet up right under your hips. Your pressure is gonna be like in your big toe and your first 2 toes here. Bend your knees slightly so that your knees are over your toes. You're gonna put the weights out here. Now normally we row the weights to our body. Now we're gonna row our body to the weights. So our hands are a fixed point here. So as I do this, I'm gonna stick my butt out and bring my chest forward. And you see how I come into this rowed position here. Now from here, I'm gonna anterior tilt. So I'm gonna try and push my tailbone towards the ceiling. I'm not dropping my chest anymore. I'm keeping my chest almost parallel with the floor. I'm rowing this. I'm keeping my intra-abdominal pressure by sucking my belly button in. I'm gonna push the floor away with my feet, not locking my legs out and bananaing my knees back like this. I'm gonna keep my pressure forward in my feet. I wanna keep my knees slightly bent. So I roll my body down to the weight. Now I push the floor away, and as I do that, I anterior tilt. And right now I can tell you that I'm feeling a big stretch in my hamstrings, especially in that like gluteal fold right underneath my glute and where my hamstring starts. And I'm just gonna hold this, breathing, making sure that my back is straight here and that I'm not overly flattening my spine. And I'm just gonna hold this and big breaths into my rib cage. I like to hold that for like 20 to 30 seconds, and I like to do 3 sets of it. So if you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner and you feel like your legs are starting to get duck-footed, you're starting to get that flat low back, that excess posterior tilt, and really tight hip flexors, give these 3 exercises a try every day. Do them at minimum twice a week. The more you do them, the better. If you can get to jiu-jitsu a little early and do these or do them after, that's good too. Even if you don't do jiu-jitsu and you just sit at a desk all day and you're pretty sedentary and you're getting those tight hip flexors, your legs are turning out, I would suggest doing these on a daily basis as well. I'd love to hear from everybody in the comments how these exercises make you feel after a couple days of trying them, if you see any benefits, or if you have any questions. Please like and subscribe to my page, that way you don't miss any videos coming out each week. And I also have other instructionals on how to use these awesome tools, so check them out.